So here we have a stock control problem. It's the worked example from the book, so that after you watch my solution, you can also look at the book solution. Maybe that'll help. Another thing that helps, I think, the first time you're doing these is to draw out a diagram using the information, which I can do for you if you want. But in the long run, you're not going to be doing that because it just takes way too much time. You don't have time for it. But if you want to, I can show you how to draw the diagram as well. That might help you to better visualize it. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to do the table. So the way it's going to work is we have all this information, so he can produce 4 per month, but if he wants to produce more than 3, he has to pay an extra 350. If any scooters are produced, he has to pay 200, and he can hold 3 scooters any month, and that costs 40 euros per scooter per month. And then they're delivered at the end of the month, and then we're told here how many scooters we need at the end of each month to be delivered. So I'm going to skip part 1 because I think that's kind of, you can kind of figure that out. It's the dynamic programming that you're finding difficult. So first of all, the stage is of course going to be the month, and we work backwards in dynamic programming. So we're going to be starting in November because that's the last month in this. Now state, we're going to say state is how many we currently have. How many scooters do we currently have? Well, we need 2 scooters in November, and of course it wouldn't make sense for him to have scooters left over after November, so really the most number of scooters we could have is 2. If we had 3 scooters, that wouldn't make sense because he needs to sell 2 at the end of November, and if he has 3, then he's going to have 1 left at the end of November, and we don't want that because we're not told anything past November. Maybe he doesn't sell them anymore, so we're allowed to assume that he has no more at the end of November. So he could have 2, he could have 1, or he could have 0. And this is at the start of November. If he has 2 at the start of November, action is how many he produces. If he has 2, he doesn't need to make any more, so he has 0. And then after he sells them, he's going to also have 0, because, he sells the 2 scooters, and then he has 0 left. If he has 1, he's going to have to produce 1, and then he sells both of them, he's going to have 0. And then if he has 0, he's going to have to produce 2, and then he's going to be left over with 0. Now we have to do the value. So for the state, if he already has 2, that means he doesn't have to produce any scooters, which means he doesn't have to pay the overheads price of 200. He does have to store 2 scooters though, so that's 40 euro per scooter. So it's going to be 80 euro because he has to store both of the scooters. And I think that's it. There's no other costs. Yeah. If he has 1 scooter, he has to produce 1 scooter, so he's producing a scooter. That means he has to pay the 200 euros for the overheads. So we're going to have 200, and then plus 40, because he has to store 1 scooter, and store a scooter costs 40. So we can say plus 40, and it's going to give us 240. And now if he stores 0 and he produces 2, well then he's just going to have to pay the 200 for the overheads, and he's storing none, so we don't have to add on anything else. So which is the best one here? Well, it's obviously the 80, so we're going to put a tick here to show that this is the optimal value for this stage. And now we can go backwards. So now we can go to October. And let's have a look. So remember, state is how many scooters at the start of October. Now, of course, first of all, he can't hold 5 scooters. It says a maximum of 3 scooters can be held in stock in any 1 month. So the maximum that he could have at the start of this month is 3. He can't hold more than that. So he could have 3, or he could have 2, or he could have 1. He couldn't have 0 because it's not possible for him to produce 5 scooters in 1 month. So at the start of the month, if he has 1, he can produce 4 scooters. That works out, but there can't be a 0 here because he can't have produced 5 scooters in 1 month. Now if he has 3, well actually there's a few options here. So this is where it gets kind of complicated, because if he has 3, well he has to produce at least 5. So he could produce 2, and then he'll have 5, and he'll have 0 left over at the end of the month. Or he could produce 3 and have 1 left over at the end of the month. Or he could produce 4 and have 2 left over at the end of the month, right? And then these 0, 1s, and 2s correspond with the 0, 1s, and 2s here. If he has 2, he could produce 3 or 4. Because he can't produce 5, and he needs to have at least 5 by the end of the month. And then if he has 1, he can only produce 4. He can't produce any more. And if he has 2 and he produces 3, he's going to have 0 left, because now he has 5 scooters. He has to sell them at the end of October, because October is 5. If he produces 4, he'll have 1 left over. And if he has 1 and produces 4, he'll have 0 left over by the end. And now we just need to do the calculation. So first of all, he's storing 3. So again, for each one he stores, it's 40. So that's going to be 120 for storing 3. He's producing 2, which means he has to pay for the overheads, which is 200. And then we have to add on the value of the destination. So the destination for 0, the value for that is 200. Because this 0 is this 0, and the value for that is 200. Add those all together, you'll get 520. Then we just keep going. So again, he has to store 3 still, so it's going to be 120 for all of these because he's storing 3. He has to pay for the overheads, the 200. And now he's going to 1, which means we have to look at the entry that corresponds with 1, and that's 240. In November, sorry, 1 second, I'll turn on. Okay, I forgot to make my cursor thing show, so hopefully it's a bit clearer now. So it needs to go to the destination 1, so that's 1 in November, the state 1, and the value for that is 240. So we have to add on the 240, and that's just going to be 560. And then if he produces 4, it's plus the 200 plus, and then we have the, because he has to produce 4, if he wants to produce a 4th scooter, he has to pay an extra 350. And then plus whatever the 2 destination is, that's 80. They're getting kind of too hard to do in my head, so I need my calculator. Where is my calculator? 1 second. Okay, and that's 750. So for each state, we're going to look, well, what's the best one? Sorry, I think it's been a while since I've done dynamic programming. I'm sorry. So for each state, we need to see which the optimal is, and in the November stage, all of them are optimal because there's no other options. For October with state 3, the optimal one is this one. So we're going to take that one because technically the optimal path could go through any of these last ones in November. So that's why it could be 2, 1, or 0 left over. So you just need to see which is the best option for if there's 2 left out, if we start the month with 2, which is the best option if we start the month with 1, and which is the best option if we start the month with 0. So, because any of those could be the final best answer. That's the whole point of dynamic programming. It's kind of hard to explain, but hopefully you can kind of get that. Maybe think about it, read the book. I don't know. I can't really... Yeah. Or you can ask questions. I'll try my best to answer them, but it's late. So now we're going to move on to the next one. If he produces 3, well, first of all, he's storing 2, so that's going to be 80. And he's storing 2 in the next one, so that's 80. He has to pay for the overheads, which is 200. And then we're going to... Destination is 0, so we go to 0 in the November, and we add the 200. And that's going to give us 480. And then if we produce 4, we have to pay the 200s for overheads. We have to also pay 350 for producing the extra scooter, plus the destination 1, that's plus 240. Put that in your calculator, and you get 80 plus 200 plus 350 plus 240, 870. The best one for this state is this 480. And then finally, if he's storing 1, he has to just pay 40, then 200 for the overheads, 350 because he's producing a 4th scooter, and then destination 0 is going to be an extra 200 in November. Sorry if I'm going too fast now, but I think you kind of get the general drift of it. 790, and that's the only possibility for state 1, so we're going to have to just take that. Okay, and now we're going to September. So in September, we need to sell 3. Yeah, and if we just have a little logical think about it, we could only start with 1. We couldn't start with 2, because in August, if we produce 4, we'll have 1 left over at the start of September. So it's not actually possible that we'll have 2 left over at the start of September, because he can't produce 5 scooters in August. So the only possibilities are he either has 1 scooter left over in September, in which case he needs at least 3, but he doesn't need just at least 3. Remember, in the next month, he needs at least 1. So in reality, what we need at the end of September is at least 4, so that we have that 1 at the start of October. So he needs to produce 3 or 4. He can't produce 2, because if he produces 2, he'll have 3 in total. He sells those 3, and then at the start of October, he has 0 in stock, and then he can't do anything, because he can't produce 5 scooters in 1 month. The other possibility for September is he has 0 scooters, in which case he just have to produce 4 scooters, because for the same reason he can't produce 3. So if he has 1 and he produces 3, he'll have 1 left over at the end of next month, And if he has one who produces 4, he'll have 2 left over at the next month. So it actually wasn't necessary to do this state 3, because that's not actually possible, is what I've now realized. But it doesn't really matter. You can do it anyway, or you could leave it out if you were kind of thinking in advance. I wasn't, so... and then if he produces the 4, he's going to have 1 left over at the end of next month. So if he's storing 1 scooter, he's going to have to pay 40. Then if he's producing 3, he's going to pay 200 for the overheads. Plus, and then destination 1 corresponds with a cost of 790. Add those all together, and you get 40 plus 200 plus 790. That's going to give you 1,030. In this case, he also has to store 1. He has to pay the 200 for the overheads. He has to pay an extra 350 for the guide to hire to produce the 4th. And then the destination 2, the optimal value for that is 480. Add those all together. We have 1070. So the 1030 is the better option. In the next one, he's storing none, so there's no cost for that. He has paid the 200 for overheads. He's paid the 350 to produce the 4th scooter, and 1 corresponds with a cost of 790. So 200 plus 350 plus 790, that's 1,340, and that's the only option for state 0, so that has to be the best one. And finally, we have August. At the start of August, I believe well, it doesn't say, but I think we can assume that he starts with no scooters, because it wouldn't really make sense otherwise. Yeah, so we'll say he starts with no scooters. I think they would have specified if he had some already in stock. So, and in this case, well, for September, he can have 0 left over. So in August, we need to have at least 3 to sell. And we could have 4 as well. And then that 4th, the extra one, would be carried into September. In which case, if you have 3, you'll have 0 left over. And then in this case, you'll have 1 left over. So you start off with 0, so there's no cost of keeping them. To produce the 3, you need to pay for the overheads, which is 200. Plus the destination 0, so that's a cost of 1,340, so that's 1,540. And then finally, if he produces 4, it's going to be the overheads 200 plus the extra scooter 350 plus 1, that's going to be 1030 in the September section. Add those together, 200 plus 350 plus 1030, that's 1,580. So the best one is 1,540, and now we trace back. So in August, we're going to produce 3. So August, we're going to produce 3. And then this goes to destination 0. And for destination 0 in September, he has to produce 4. So that means in September, he has to produce 4. Because we went to 0, and then this 0 goes to this 0. And in September, he has to produce 4. And now we're at the 1. And this 1 is the 1 in October, the state 1. And that means in October he also produces 4. So October, he produces 4. That gives a destination of 0, which corresponds with the 0 starting in November. And then he produces 2 in November. So then November, he produces 2. And that's how you can solve the problem. Again, this October 3 line, that was not necessary, because it's not possible to have 3 at the start of October, because in September, the most he could produce is 4. Sorry, the most he could have is 1, then he produces 4, leaving him with 5. He has to sell 3, and then he has 2 left over. It's not possible for him to have 3 left over at the start of October. So I hope that helped, and if you have any questions, please ask me. And if you want me to draw the diagram that corresponds with this, I can do that as well. Thank you.